Good evening. Italy was in search of a new government today for the 41st time since the end of World War II. Government number 40, headed by Prime Minister Arnaldo Forlani, collapsed yesterday under the weight of a most unusual scandal. The revelation that nearly 1,000 of Italy's elite, including 3 cabinet members, were allegedly members of an outlawed, super-secret, super-evil Masonic lodge called P2. Today, Italian President Sandro Pertini said he would call on a political leader tomorrow to form a new government, and all indications were that leader would again be Forlani. But it may not be quite that easy. Forlani is a member of the Christian Democrats, the party that has controlled the government for 36 years. But they have control through a coalition with the socialists and other parties. Will the others now allow the Christian Democrats to remain in charge? And what about the communists who have been chaffing for a larger role in the government? And what is this thing called P2 anyhow? What, in short, is going on in Italy? It's the question we ask tonight. Robert McNeil is off. Charlene Hunter-Galt is in New York. Charlene?
Jim, the mysterious thing called P2, also known as Propaganda Due, D-U-E, was described by Italian magistrates as a state within a state. In addition to the 3 cabinet ministers, its reach extended to 2 undersecretaries, 30 members of parliament, military officers, diplomats, magistrates, professors, and journalists. The problem was not that so many leading members of government belonged to a Masonic lodge. It was that they belonged secretly, and in Italy, secret societies are illegal. What deepened suspicion about the group was the fact that the Grand Master of the lodge was millionaire industrialist Licio Gelli. Mr. Gelli, currently a fugitive, has been implicated in a number of dubious activities, including the fake kidnapping of convicted financier Michael Sindana, who had attempted to avoid trial in New York by fleeing to Europe. It was this investigation which turned up the list of names that brought down the Italian government. For some more details on Italy's crisis, we go now to Rodolfo Broncoli, U.S. correspondent for La Repubblica, a left liberal Italian newspaper published in Rome and Milan. First, Mr. Broncoli, what can you tell us about P2?
Well, it's a secret lodge, as you have just stated, and there's nothing new actually, because it was well known that there was something secret going on, and this P2 has entered practically in every recent scandals: oil fraud, tax fraud, oil kickbacks, and also some more serious thing like attempt of right-wing coup d'etat, and of course the Sindona scandals. What wasn't probably unknown till now was the dimension of this scandal, the involvement of the establishment. To give you an idea, it's like having the Attorney General, the CIA director, the FBI director, some of the managing editors of the most important newspapers, bankers, like having David Rockefeller, for example, and of course the head of state-owned concerns, of the CBS Evening News, for example. This is what is really scaring, because you have the very people that were supposed to defend and protect the Constitution and the democratic institutions in Italy.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's the story on this man, Gelli?
Gelli is a strange guy with a double passport. He's an Italian and an Argentinian. As a matter of fact, he was an Argentinian diplomat, and was a guy who fought with Mussolini and the fascist republic with the Germans after 1943, and at the same time is somebody who doesn't look like a sort of secret brain that can manipulate everything and have everything under control. It was clear that he was using secret files, possibly given to him by members of the sect from the intelligence apparatus, to blackmail people. Because, for example, there are a lot of requests to enter in the sect, very recent, late 1980, beginning of 1981, when it was very well known that the P2 was something dangerous.
Well, why then? You said they were a right-wing group, they were well known to be dangerous. Why were so many of those prominent Italians involved? I mean, was blackmail involved, or were
there are possible explanations. Some, not all of them, of course, were secret conspirators is obvious. Some of them probably were simply thinking of joining a sort of VIP club to help advance their careers. Other very possibly were blackmail. And this is clear. There are people that really is really difficult to understand why otherwise would have joined that thing.
Mm-hmm. You mean like the members of Parliament? And
I know some of them personally, for example. I'm really surprised to find their names there.
And they've not been connected with any kind of right-wing politics?
No, as a matter of fact, you have even
criminal activity?
You have even people from the left wing of the Socialist Party.
Mm-hmm. Well, didn't they know when they joined this society, for whatever reason, that it was illegal and what they were doing was illegal?
Well, the legality is very difficult because until now nobody has tried to prove that that was actually a secret set and therefore illegal. That is something different from the Masonry and the other lodges that are legal.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so I don't know exactly if they can be charged of being members of an illegal sect knowing that it was illegal, but they must have known what really the P2 was.
Just very briefly, you know, this country is so used to scandals and public ones. Why would a scandal like this be able to bring down the entire government?
Because it's the scandal of the scandals. The whole establishment is involved in different degree. It's like a big river in which entering small rivers, the small scandals of the previous years. The Sindona scandal, the oil tax fraud, other scandals and others.
Ripples.
Yes, they are all going
stream.
there. And I'm saying, I said the whole establishment, with two exceptions that are very interesting, and I think would be useful to talk about this to understand where the political crisis may go. The Republican Party, that is a small, center-left, very respected party that unfortunately polled just 3.5% of the votes in the last election, and the Communist Party that polled 30% of the vote.
All right, we'll get back to that. Jim?
Another view of what's going on from another Italian journalist, Marino De Medici, U.S. correspondent for the Rome newspaper Il Tempo. First, what is your impression of P2 and what it's all about? Is it a big crime organization?
Well, I believe that the P2 scandal is very much in line with a series of scandals in Italy that have happened and that have been artificially mounted. Certainly, unfortunately, it doesn't take much in Italy to start a scandal. But what has happened this time is that an event which is extra-parliamentary and which is at the center of a development that cannot right now be proven because we have to act with the presumption that all these people are innocent until they're proven guilty.
And most of them have issued denials.
Well, that is not surprising because one of the rules of the Masonry is that you deny your belonging to it. So I wouldn't take that seriously. And again, as my colleague pointed out in New York, many of us were surprised by the names involved in that list. But there is another question. What is a secret society? And you have to ask yourself, what are the aims of this particular secret society? Now, there is an article of the Constitution, there is Article 18 of the Constitution, which spells out that a secret society is against the Republican order, against our system of democracy. But as in many other cases, this article of the Constitution was left not implemented. It was not implemented, like the right to strike. There are articles in the Constitution about the right to strike, and they were supposed to be implemented with regulations. That's perhaps a bad word. But as anybody who's gone to Italy in the recent years knows, there are lots of strikes. The matter of what constitutes a secret society, according to the Constitution, has not been resolved.
Well, you know, I read today a quotation from one of the magistrates who was investigating P2, and the statement was made that this organization was set up to change the constitutional framework of Italy from a parliamentary form of government to a presidential form of government. Is that jive with what you have heard?
Well, I am reporting things that I've heard myself. I have no definitive proof about this case. But again, if I go back to the question of aims, is it true that the aim of this society, secret society, was to create material that could, at one point or the other, be helpful in overthrowing the constituted order? Is it true that its members, or prospective members, in fact, were required to bring a secret document to its Grand Master? If this can be proven, indeed, then we can have a case for a conspiracy. I mean, everybody in this country knows that the conspiracy, in order to be persecuted, has to have an illegal aim. Now, we don't know. The Minister of Defense has said that no documents belonging to the state have been found in the archives of this organization. So that's all we have to go right now.
Do you see a political similarity among these 1,000 people, or do you agree with Mr. Brancoli that that there were some leftists and some rightists? Do you see any pattern to these people?
No, there is no pattern, except that has been pointed out. These people are people who belong to the elite, to the intellectual, banking, political elite of the country. There are two socialist members of this lodge, and one of them, in fact, is the only one, Chiquito, who has admitted belonging to the sect. He's the only one who has admitted it. Other people have admitted it implicitly, perhaps. The chief of staff of the Italian armed forces has resigned, although he denies belonging to the sect. The Minister of Justice, of course, has resigned. The head of a television channel has resigned. All these people, of course, are claiming not to be members. That there will have to be an investigation, but most importantly, as I said before, we have to understand what makes up this secret society, because it's not so secret as it has been said. These people had parties and cocktails at the Excelsior Hotel right across the American embassy, and I'm not at all sure that the American diplomats were not invited at one point to join the party. So
a party that was openly given by P2?
Yes, well, the P2 is part of the Grand Orient, which is the Italian umbrella organization for the Italian Masonry. So it's not much of a secret. And then remember, you're dealing with Italy, which is not only the country of Machiavelli, who set out the principles of modern political science in a way, but also the country of Cagliostro, a man whose intrigues and machinations are famous, and Italians are bound to enlarge these things and to make it even murkier than it is.
You think, in other words, there's still an awful lot to be learned about all of this?
Absolutely, but the right way to go about it before provoking a government crisis over this issue would be to find out exactly what this organization was up to. Now, Prime Minister Forlani has done the right thing in my mind. He has called on three very well-known jurists, including the former head of the Italian Constitutional Court, to investigate the issue and decide whether indeed the parameters of a secret society in violation of the Constitution, specifically of Article 18, can be found.
All right. Thank you. Charlene?
Now, for a different perspective, we go to a veteran observer of Italian affairs. He is Peter Lang, Associate Professor of Government at Harvard and Research Associate at the Center for European Studies. Dr. Lang, why was this government so vulnerable?
Well, I don't actually think this government was much more vulnerable than any other than, I would say, most importantly, the ambitions of the Socialist Party. That is, the Socialist ambitions have been growing, and as the Socialist ambitions have grown, any coalition which included the Socialists but did not give to them the role that they would like to have was vulnerable to their using a scandal or some such thing to withdraw from the coalition and attempt to up the ante, so to speak.
Is there any, the question that keeps coming up to my mind is why now this thing was provoked? If everybody knew, as Mr. De Medici just said, about P2 and everything, I mean, is there any suggestion that there is political opportunism at work here? Or?
Well, if we use opportunism to mean taking advantages of opportunities, then
or creating
them, then there certainly is some political opportunism involved. Why now? I think a list with hundreds of names has a different impact than parties at the Excelsior Hotel.
But I mean, in terms of the government itself and its vulnerability, is it particularly vulnerable to something like this?
I think the socialist ambitions are particularly high at the moment, I would say that. I think that the results of the Italian referendum a couple of weeks ago, the results in France, a general sense that this government had kind of run its course, that it wasn't functioning very well, a certain greater willingness of the communists to support some initiative taken by the Socialist Party. All of those things, I think, have fed the ambitions of Mr. Craxi to become Prime Minister.
The head of the Socialist
Party, to become Prime Minister or to attempt to become Prime Minister. And this crisis these revelations provided an opportunity.
And so you think that politics is really fanning the flames of something that might have died. I mean, for example, why wasn't Forlani allowed to simply replace the tarnished ministers instead of bringing down the whole government? There were 3 ministers involved.
Well, I think for 2 reasons. One, because the opportunity presented itself and it needed to be taken. And 2, because a reshuffling of the government, which that might have constituted, might have delayed any response, new opportunity arising where the socialists could try to translate this policy longer than they wished. I think that they had been planning, obviously this is speculation, but looking at the way things had been going, sometime during the summer or early fall to attempt to shift the coalition and bring, for the first time, after all, this is not a petty ambition, this is for the first time in the post-war period to bring a non-Christian Democrat as a prime minister of Italy.
Well, the speculation is that Forlani is likely to be named tomorrow to head the new government, and he is a Christian Democrat. I mean, is he going to be able to put together a government that can work, and can the Christian Democrats hold on to it?
Well, I would doubt very seriously that he can put together a government, at least as the first person nominated. That I would doubt that. Whether the Christian Democrats will be able to hold on to the prime ministership at the end of this crisis is more difficult to answer. It's very dangerous to bet against the endurance of the Christian Democrats. They've endured very well in the face of an awful lot of scandals and other forms of political problems. Nonetheless, I would say the probabilities may be higher this time around than they have been for a while.
And the communists, does this open the door they've been waiting for?
No, I think that the most it might do is give them some greater voice from the outside with a new coalition which might be formed. I think it's very, very unlikely that their basic position with respect to the government would change.
All right. Jim?
Finally, Italy's political future is seen by Michael Harrison, Associate Professor of European Studies at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, who has written extensively on Italian politics. First, would you explain to the non-Italian layman why a man would resign, his government would fall, Mr. Forlani I'm referring to, and now 24 hours later be asked to form a new government?
Well, there's been a growing sense of the weakness of this particular government, especially in the face of expected economic difficulties in Italy over the summer and indeed over the next 2 years. The economy has been looking very weak, although it's been strong over the past year or two. In this case, as Peter Lang quite correctly pointed out, I believe it was technically the socialists who refused to attend a meeting of the current cabinet in order to decide about resignations of particular ministers in order to keep the entire government together. So it in fact is a socialist action, certainly determined by Craxi, that has caused the resignation of this government. I don't believe it was Forlani's own choice. And the socialists broke the solidarity of the cabinet in this case, and they obviously expect to profit from the political machinations that will take place now.
Do you agree with Peter Lang that Forlani is going to have trouble putting this thing together? If in fact the president does name him tomorrow as we expect him to.
It's tradition, in fact, to turn to the outgoing cabinet in order to give them that prime minister the first chance to put together a new cabinet. It's also tradition that that cabinet not form a government immediately. So they will then, the president will then consult leaders of other parties. They will each have a chance to try to put together a particular majority in parliament in order to have a functioning government. They may turn to Forlani again or some other Christian Democrat later on in the process, but it can be a very elaborate process of arriving at a government. It can take a long time.
What do you think the chances are of Craxi ending up as prime minister after all is said and done, and the socialists for the first time since the end of the war having the government?
It's an unpredictable situation. It may be their best chance. Craxi and his party had a congress at Palermo last month, and he came out as the unquestioned leader of the party, and the party's very solidly behind him. And he certainly is an extremely ambitious and tactically very clever Italian politician, and he may be able to profit from a sense of disillusionment on the part of the public and a loss of confidence on the part of the Christian Democrats. On the other hand, I don't really see any particular reason why the Christian Democrats, unless they as a party become very involved in this scandal, and in fact, although there may have been some Christian Democrats who were the members of this lodge, I believe the statutes of the party forbid Christian Democrats to belong to the Freemasons. So as a party as a whole, they don't support them, so I don't know that they'll be so tainted
Well, the stories I read today indicated there were some Christian Democrats, but there were also many socialists on that list of that magic list of 1,000 as well. Let me ask you finally, what is your own best guess as far as a scenario in terms of how this thing's going to sort itself out? I'm talking now about the government and how it's going to end up.
I suspect the best guess is we'll end up with another Christian Democratic government, perhaps extending itself to another party such as the Liberals. This has already been discussed, to go from a four-party to five-party coalition. That would probably be the safest estimate, but it is an unpredictable situation, and we could have another outcome.
Thank you. Charlene?
Mr. Bronkley, what's your reaction to the assessments of both Mr. Lang and Mr. Harrison that should Mr. Forlani be named tomorrow as expected to head the new government, he's going to have a very difficult time?
Well, that's obvious, given the situation. But I would like to remind that something that has not been mentioned so far, and the fact is that the 25th of June, there is a local election in Italy involving local governments in cities like Rome and Genoa, and regional government in Sicily. All in all, 10 million voters is a very large sample, is 1/4 of the Italian electorate. And I think that Craxi, the Socialist Party, is counting on that election. As a matter of fact, even without this scandal, it was well known that after the election, probably the PSI was going to open the crisis and ask the government to resign. Why? Because traditionally, the two largest parties, the Christian Democrats and the Communists, are not doing very well in local elections, while the smaller parties and the Socialist Party are doing much better. And so Craxi and the Socialist Party can hope realistically to increase its votes and to go, for example, to 15%, and putting all together the results of the referendum on the abortion law, the victory of Mitterrand in France, that could create the momentum throughout him.
Enough to help him accede to the
prime
prime
ministership. Yeah, but now the
ministership.
problem is to see if the crisis is going to stay open till after this election. I mean, it's 3 weeks from now.
I see. Mr. De Medici, what about your reaction to that? Do you think this is, A, going to be very difficult for Mr. Forlani to form a government, and is it giving, has this given the socialists a good shot at it?
We have an expression in Italy, whether a crisis is piloted or not piloted. This crisis doesn't seem to be piloted. I think the exceptional character of it has been underlined. But there is one firm element in this crisis, and that is the statement of the President of the Republic that he is adverse to calling for the dissolution of Parliament. Now, this is a very firm point. And it has been pointed out that there is a deadline, a very important deadline in the administrative elections on June the 21st. And as Craxi is the magnetic needle of the compass, the political compass in Italy, we have to watch him very carefully, because it was him, after all, that provoked this crisis by not going along with Forlani's plan to purge the Mason members of the cabinet. And now he may use this crisis in a way as a tactical device to reestablish a dialogue with the communists. And so there are elements of tactics which are not yet clear in this operation.
All right, Jim?
Mr. Lang, to you first. Much has been made about the fact that Italy has had 40 governments since World War II. We're now into government number 41. What is there about Italian politics that causes it to change so often, and is that in fact a bad thing, or what is it?
Well, I would have said actually the bad thing is that underlying those 41 changes of government, there's been basically great stability in the party which is governed. I would say more of the problems of Italian politics are linked to the absence of any real alternates in government than to the repeated turnover of governments. Now, this is not to suggest that the rapid turnover in governments doesn't create some instability, but it's also worth remembering, for instance, that some ministers have stayed in office for very long periods of time, just moving from one government to the next caretaker government to the next government and so forth. And often these have been in some of the critical ministries, defense, the Ministry of State, Justice, and things of that sort. So underlying this flux at the surface, there's been an enormous amount of stability, and one could really, I think, argue too much stability in terms of generating the kind of competitive logic within Italy and between the parties, the kind of competition that might have produced better government, more effective government, and perhaps also fewer crises of this sort.
Mm-hmm. You agree with that, Mr. Harrison?
Oh, yes, and especially in recent months, we've had a buildup of scandals that, in terms of state management of the country. There was the incredibly inept handling of the earthquake last year. Last week was a week of two major scandals. There were the indictment and imprisonment of leaders of the Milan banking and financial establishment, which may or may not be somehow vaguely connected to this, and then it was completely swept off the front pages the next day by this P2 scandal itself. So the whole country and the elite of the country that are centered in the Christian Democratic Party, but go through the parties that have governed in Italy over the last years, are implicated by what has been happening there. And I think the loss of public confidence, and I'm not sure the socialists will be the beneficiaries of this because they have been governing and they are implicated themselves.
Who will be the beneficiary of all this, Mr. De Medici?
I believe that the Communist Party will benefit, if for no other reason that they will be appealing to a vast group of sympathizers or disaffected people, or people who see the plots under every corner, in every corner. I think that they will benefit. Now, whether this will...
what will the result of that benefit be?
Well, I think some credibility in their campaign. Now, what they have done, they have accused the government, of course, of being implicitly involved in this crisis, because the l'Unità, the party organ, has called for an investigation of the factual responsibilities of the government. What are the factual responsibilities of the government in this scandal, beside the fact that two of its cabinet members happen to be members of it? So it's hard to see, first prima facie, where Forlani is responsible for this thing and why he should resign, as it was correctly pointed out at the beginning of this broadcast.
Do you agree, Mr. Brancoli, that the communists stand to gain the most?
Yes, but in practical terms, probably it's the Republican Party that may gain the most, because it's in a central position today. It's not tainted by this scandal. It's small but very well respected, and is a member of the coalition. And if Craxi fail and the Christian Democratic fail, then you may have a prime minister who is Republican.
Right. Gentlemen in New York, thank you very much. Gentlemen here, thank you, and good night, Charlene.
Good night, Jim.
And we'll see you tomorrow night. I'm Jim Lara. Thank you and good night.